Nearly every country in the world is in debt. The United States today owes more than $38 trillion, the highest level in its history. The European Union carries around $14 trillion in debt. Japan's is nearly $9 trillion. Even oil-rich nations, as well as export giants like Germany and China, have not escaped debt. Looking at this picture, you can't help but stop and ask, if everyone is in debt, then who is the creditor? This is where the story starts to get interesting. This is the financial historian, the place where money, power, and history intersect. And let's say this up front, nothing in this world is as simple as it looks at first glance. We usually think of debt as a burden we carry on our backs. But the modern world, debt is less a burden and more a skeleton. The entire system we live in is built on it. Wars, crises, economic booms, and collapses. All of them take place on top of these invisible structures. And when you start digging into the chain of creditors, you run into an uncomfortable truth. The world is not really in debt to any one person or country. To a large extent, it is in debt to itself. But that does not mean this system is fair to everyone. To understand how we got here, we need to go back a bit. Today, total global debt has surpassed $315 trillion, nearly 3 times the size of the world economy. We didn't arrive at this point overnight. The story begins long before credit cards, online banking, or digital currencies. In 1694, England was at war with France, and its treasury was almost empty. The king turned to merchants for a solution. He offered them a deal. Give me money now and I will pay you regular interest in the future through taxes. To manage this arrangement, the Bank of England was created. That day, a critical threshold was crossed. For the first time, the state began spending money it did not yet have. In return, it offered something extremely powerful, the government's promise. A promise that was trustworthy, transferable, and tradable. This is how the government bond was born. The foundation of today's financial system was laid. The idea spread quickly. France copied it. The Netherlands refined it. The newly founded United States adopted it to finance its war of independence and fuel its growth. National debt was no longer a weakness. It became a sign of credibility. If you could borrow, you were taken seriously. Empires once conquered land for gold. Now they issued bonds for interest. The battlefield shifted from the sword to the balance sheet. Fast forward to today. And debt has become the common language of the world. The US owes $38 trillion. Japan owes over $9 trillion. Global debt grows by roughly $1 trillion every 100 days. Everyone is in debt. But at the same time, everyone is somehow a creditor. Banks, pension funds, insurance companies, and even us, whether we realize it or not. So who is really holding the strings? Let's look at the United States, because its debt affects not just itself, but the entire world. About half of the $38 trillion is owed to investors outside of government institutions. Most of those investors are American banks, pension funds, investment funds, insurance companies, and the Federal Reserve. The remaining roughly $9 trillion is held by foreign entities. Japan is the largest creditor, followed by China. Then come the United Kingdom, Luxembourg, and Belgium. So when people say the US owes China, that's not entirely wrong. But it's a very small part of the picture. Only about 2% of the total. In reality, most of America's debt is owed to America itself. The Treasury issues bonds. Banks and funds buy them. The Federal Reserve purchases those bonds and creates new dollars in the process. Taxes are used to pay interest, and that money flows right back into Americans' retirement accounts. It's a true hall of mirrors. The debt is real, but the creditor is the system itself. This isn't unique to the US. It's a global cycle. Japan lends to the US lends to Europe through the IMF. Europe lends to developing countries through the World Bank. Those countries then hold their foreign currency reserves in Western bonds. Everyone holds everyone else's paper. No one breaks the game. Because if someone leaves the table, the game ends. The real referees of this system are the markets. Massive funds, central banks, institutions managing trillions of dollars. They decide who can borrow cheaply and who struggles. When trust disappears, currencies collapse, interest rates spike, governments shake. Ballots choose leaders, markets decide who survives. At the center of the system are central banks, because what we call money is really another form of debt. When central banks buy bonds, they create new money. One balance sheet's liability becomes another's asset. Every unit of currency in circulation carries the trace of a debt somewhere. There's no such thing as debt-free money. This system has stood for decades on trust. As long as investors believe governments will pay interest, even if the principal never disappears, the machine keeps running. But we've also seen what happens when trust breaks in Greece, Argentina, Sri Lanka. When debts became unpayable, creditors suddenly appeared. The IMF, rating agencies, anonymous bondholders. And yet, every time the system resets itself. New debts replace old ones. Names change, numbers remain. Because in the modern world, debt is not designed to be paid off. It is designed to be rolled over. Governments don't aim to close debt the way individuals do. They replace old debt with new debt. The real issue is keeping interest payments flowing. The global economy depends on this flow, like a shark that must keep swimming to survive. The US will never fully pay off its debt, neither will Japan. Because if they did, the foundation of the global economy would collapse. The safest assets would disappear, money would shrink, and the system would seize up. That's why political promises to eliminate debt are often an illusion. The real goal is not to erase debt, but to keep it believable. But that belief doesn't benefit everyone equally. Interest income flows upward. The cost of debt is usually paid by workers and taxpayers. That's why, as debt grows, inequality grows with it. In the end, we arrive here. There's no single villain in this system, not China, not Wall Street, not the IMF. All of them are part of it. And so are we. Debt used to be a chain. Today it looks like balance. But if that balance breaks, if trust collapses, we remember what debt really is. A promise that cannot be kept forever. If this gave you a different perspective, subscribe. History has answers. I'll show you where to look.